in Parashat Noach about the generation of the flood. Now, they started off with minor theft, and it ended up at the very last minute. Their last diabolic action was when the earth was, the fissures in the earth were opening up, and the water was coming from the depths. They took their own children, and they used their children to stuff them into the cracks in the ground. And we mentioned that it's not really something we can conceive in our generation. Really, such an act of wholesale destruction. There's not really any comparison to this in our day and age. I actually spoke about this. I spoke in Edgeware Das this Shabbat for Shabbat UK, which was very nice. And somebody said to me, "Well, what about suicide bombers?" So I said, "Yeah, okay, but they are a group of people. We're talking about the entire world population at the time were using their own children as, to save their own skins. So where do you find such a comparison?" So, of course, there's no exact comparison that we can relate to, fortunately. However, without wanting to draw a direct comparison or a parallel, it sort of reminded me about how sometimes people behave with their children. You're at home and you've just arrived home after a hard day's slog in the office, and you're so tired and you just want to sit down and have a cup of tea, relax for half an hour or so, and the first thing is your kid comes to you with his homework and he says, "Mommy or Daddy, can you do homework with me?" Again, you're putting that child off. You're pushing him away. You're putting his own future ahead of your future. It's on some degree something to think about. Again, I want to stress, I'm not making a direct comparison. Or what about the child who just wants to spend time with the parents, but yet we're too busy with our phones, with our internet, and this is a common. Okay, let's put aside this comparison with the diabolical people in the generation of the flood. Let's put that aside for 1 minute. Let's just talk about the trend that the Yetzer Hara has with us of making us prioritize things which should not have any priority whatsoever over things which should have our greatest priority. Now, of course, what I'm driving at is the parent-children thing. Parent is busy on his phone, is texting anybody and everybody, gets involved with this and checking something on the email, and meanwhile the child just wants 5 minutes time with mummy and daddy. That's all. I'm not asking to spend 3 days with me in the Bahamas. I just want a bit of time. Maybe come and play a game of football with me in the garden. No, too busy. I can't do that now. You're bothering me. You're hassling me. And they become a burden. And these are, once all is said and done, who are you leaving behind in this world? You're not going to leave your phone. You're not going to take your phone and say, "I bequeath my entire fortune, my Yerusha is going to go to my iPhone, and they're going to get the beneficiary of my entire fortune." It's not going to happen. Or you can't sit with your iPhone and start teaching it things and expecting it to carry on in this world after you. It's not going to happen, no matter how many programs and applications and all this stuff. It's going to go to your children. But we're turning it the other way around. There's this trend. We're prioritizing things which are baseless and they have no meaning in reality. And like Rav Shimshon Pinkus used to say, alav shalom, he used to say, if it ain't going to go on the gravestone, then it's not important. They don't put on the gravestone, "Here lies the greatest Angry Birds player. He was expert. He passed." I've never seen it. I've never played it. Baruch Hashem. He passed every level and he got so many amount of points. Or then they're not going to put down the greatest surfer of the internet, the greatest most amount of friends on Facebook. That's not what they put. You don't see that on it. Even goes to any graveyard, you're not going to see that, says Rav Shimshon. So what are you going to see? This lady was an Eshet Chaya. This man was a Ba'al Midot. He had fantastic qualities. He always gave tzedakah. He did chesed to anybody. These are the things you'll see. So if it ain't important, if you've got to be aiming, your life has to be a representation of what people will say about you after you pass away, after 120 years. Or what they're going to write on your gravestone. You don't know what they're going to write on your gravestone. Yeah? You just hope that when they write it, it's going to be many, many years in the future. But what you can perpetuate is what people will say about you. Of course, you never know with any certainty anything that anyone's going to say about you, but you stand a good chance if your portrayal is something to be worthy of. So people will say, so and so is always quick to do mitzvot. Whenever there's something needs to be doing in the community, he's first off. I heard something the other day, a praise of somebody that whenever something goes wrong in the shul, it's a burst pipe, or the heating's not working, or power cut, straight away he's there. He puts everything aside, straight away goes to the shul and sorts it out. He doesn't say, you know what, it's late, leave it till tomorrow. No, straight away he goes and does it. There's tremendous praise, and that's something that's going to stay with you. Unlike the other things which we prioritize. Okay, I think you get the meaning. Right, there was a doctor, and he was having a 60th birthday party, and in attendance were all his neighbours from his street. He lived on like one of these leafy suburbs. So all the people who came to his house for his 60th birthday were all either friends of his or past patients who he developed a relationship with, a friendship with. I don't know how that's possible, but anyway. And at this dinner party, there must be maybe 15, 20 people there, and they brought children as well. That every single person there was heaping praise on this doctor. How much he'd helped them, how he'd always been there for them, how he never refused any medical emergency, and of course this fellow the doctor was was blushing, was very embarrassed, and he got up and he made a speech and he said, I love you so much, all of you people, you've always been there for me as well. Okay, and this carried on, and then a little kid comes in, the child of the doctor runs in, and he says, Daddy, you have to listen to the radio now. You haven't listened to the radio. So they go to the radio, and there's an announcement on the radio that says there have been various what we suspected missiles have been launched, and everyone has to take cover, and we don't know what's going to happen, what's going to be. Just hide wherever you can underground and don't come out. It could be a nuclear threat. So of course, but these people are started running in every direction. Meanwhile, the doctor and his family went inside their own basement, which the doctor had very wisely converted into a shelter. I don't know how they did it in those days, but it was whatever is proof, soundproof, windproof, and this proof, that proof. So he quickly ushered, because he was suspecting that something could happen in the future, so he was prepared. So he ushered in his wife and his son, and then himself, and they bought all food, and they started filling up all these cans with water, and they went inside, and they're waiting for the worst. They were just waiting. They had the radio there. They're waiting for the announcement for the all clear, and who knows how long they were going to be in there. They had plenty of provisions, but it was a small room. It would last them for, let's say, a few weeks. Anyway, an hour later, they hear a knock on the door. Who's knocking at the door? It's one of the people who was at the birthday party, one of his friends. Please let me in. So the doctor said, what do you mean? Well, what? Go home, go find a place for shelter. No, I haven't got a shelter, said the voice on the other side of the door. And they were saying, please let me in. It's just me and my wife and my two kids. Again, the doctor says, look, I would love to let you in, but I can't. I've only got enough provisions for my family. There's physically no room in here. We can't fit everyone in and with all the food and everything, and we wouldn't, just not practical. So there's an argument, and the fellow says, how could you do this to me? I was your best friend. You leave me outside. Who knows what's going to happen? And the doctor says, I'm so sorry. Look, I prepared for this for so long. Anyway, to cut a long story short, all of the family slowly started coming back, and they were all knocking on the door. Let us in, let us in, let us in. And the doctor inside said, no, I can't let you in. And of course the mob started getting angrier and angrier. And see the difference before. Just an hour earlier they were all smiles. Now they wanted blood. And what do? They formed a gang, and they got a big battering ram, and they were using this battering ram to get into the thing. And you see the doctor and the family cowering inside, and the door starts to bend, and then they got in. And what happened at that point? There was a radio announcement that they made a terrible mistake. It was a false alarm. So now what happens? They all felt very foolish, and they all said, okay, we're really sorry, and they wanted to turn it back to how it was. But of course the doctor wasn't having any of it. It was a very thought-provoking story, I thought, and you can see the obvious comparison to the Teva of Noach, the Noah's Ark, and all the people who he warned them for 120 years, and they didn't take a blind bit of notice. Meanwhile, when the rain started pouring down, they also started pounding at the ark. They also wanted to break in. The point I'm trying to bring across is that a person, when push comes to shove, you really see how a person's loyalties and a person's character traits, because you put that person in an emergency situation, and it can basically go one of two ways. Either a person can be very benevolent and could look after his friend. You see these stories about people lifting up cars and there are people trapped underneath, and you see stories about people rescuing people from volcanoes and earthquakes and off planes that have crashed. But at the same time, you go the other way, like in this story that I just mentioned. You really see a person's veneer. So here in the flood, as if we didn't know how bad they were, as soon as they were put under this pressure, this life-threatening situation, they took the worst measure, and that is they sacrificed their children ahead of themselves.